So, Mihai Ivascu, you are the CEO of Modex. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Modex?
First of all, thanks for inviting us today. It's a real honor to be here in the capital of crypto, like we call it. Very happy to be here with all of you, and very happy to see a lot of support for this new industry, which is Web3, blockchain, and everything related to this ecosystem. Years ago, when we first came here in 2017, we were one of the few that decided to go on this route and to go properly and build a strong foundation for a Web3 company. At that point, there was no Web3. At that point, there was just a lot of excitement around crypto. There was a lot of interest from Hassans and our good friends that decided to be the first ones to really put a framework around this very innovative technology. And we at Modex, we were just starting out. We were a software company at that point. We were building various fintech products. We started in London. We're incorporated in London. And we were looking at a lot of applications of fintech, of blockchain and fintech. That was our start. And then we decided to really see how we can bring more value in this space. And at that point in 2017, Modex was an enabler for blockchain development. We wanted to serve the blockchain developers and build a marketplace for them, build various tools for them to develop. We've done an ICO at that point, which was really challenging at that time. We were a bit late in the ICO boom, so we came exactly in 2018. So we kind of like missed the track, but we said after the first wave, there's always a second wave.
Yeah.
And now we're in the second wave where actually there's a lot of excitement around proper enterprise blockchain applications, and there's a new world that is ready to welcome Web3 applications. So this is where we are. We had a challenging time. We had 2018, 19, and 2021 were really tough years because nobody wanted to really listen to blockchain entrepreneurs. Everybody was against crypto. It was extremely hard, from opening bank accounts to conducting business to speaking at events. Nobody wanted to hear about blockchain. And all of a sudden, in 2021, at the end, 2022, now it became like an accepted technology. There's a lot of substance behind it. And we're happy to be here, stronger and with bigger plans. And we're happy that we're here when it all started.
So I guess in a sense, the hard times have acted as a filter for all the serious players that will actually bring value with their proposition. And so, Anthony, you have been involved in this space for quite a while. Welcome back also, because you've been at Startup right before. So tell us a little bit more about when you got involved in the DLT space, what made you interested in this space, and where you are now.
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, I've been asked this question quite a few times, and I'm sort of sick of repeating it all the time. And I feel myself like I've heard it myself a million times, same story.
Same here.
But obviously,
with me.
not with a lot of people in the room. So yeah, the story is I think 2014. So I come from a background in financial services, so I've always been a financial services lawyer. And around 2014, we were approached by a company that was interested in setting up a Bitcoin exchange. At the time, there wasn't any other tokens around. And as any sort of good lawyer would say, we said, yeah, of course, there's something we can do. And then turned to Google, what is Bitcoin? So this was the first time I'd ever heard about this. And looking into it, all I could see was negative information about it. All about Silk Road, money laundering. The fact that it was used was rife amongst criminal activity, illicit activity. So it was quite challenging at first. I thought, well, this may not be something that we should be getting involved with. But the more I read, the more sort of interested I became in the technology, but also in Bitcoin as an asset class. And I started reading a lot about it, and started just trying to speak to anybody who cared or who wanted to listen. There weren't many of them. But I started, realizing that, not just at the firm, but also across, Gibraltar, across the banks, other financial services companies, even the regulator. Nobody really knew what I was talking about or seemed to care much. So, but eventually I came across somebody who said, look, I think it was KPMG, somebody at KPMG who said, look, we're not doing much about this here in Gibraltar, but our Isle of Man company is hosting a summit in Isle of Man in a couple of weeks' time, so why don't you go as our guest? So I went there, and that was really where the first time I saw, wow, this is an interesting industry. There's a lot of, I spoke to many people there who had already been around in that industry for a few years, who were working on, very interesting use cases, businesses, providing services around this new technology and assets. And I found that super interesting. I came back and started to, again, this time even more sort of enthusiastic about it. I started speaking to the regulators and to government about it, and thankfully they responded favorably eventually. And as I say, the rest is history.
That's good. You're also now the co-chair of the Gibraltar Association for New Technologies, so you are seeing all the new interest that's coming in and the changes that are happening in the space. But you've been supporting startups in various industries with particularly, interest in blockchain. So I'm going to stick with you for a sec. The past few years, they've been really hard, obviously, for everybody, but some industries have seen more challenges than others. As a law firm and leading the FinTech and DLT team, how are you adapting, and where do you see new opportunities?
So you're right. It's been it's been a couple of challenging years, but actually in the crypto and blockchain space, we've seen a lot of growth in that time. Back from when we first met, another interesting story is that Modex were actually probably my first, one of the first blockchain clients.
So proud, Mihai.
that I ever had. Serious blockchain clients that I ever had, because there was a lot of pro bono work that I was doing back in those days. But yeah, Modex were one of the first companies that I really sort of started working closely with, and since those days, you mentioned sort of the ICO boom and then the crypto winter. So we did see huge opportunities for a year or so. Mm-hmm. And then with the market crash, a lot of those disappeared, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, I think, because there was a lot of, we were getting a lot of inquiries, a lot of queries from, the type of companies that you
shady. It's called shady.
That's one way to say it, but it was the type of companies that you could sense weren't really in for the right reasons, and sort of beyond that, you could see that potentially they wouldn't be in for the long run and they wouldn't last, and the crypto winter eventually flushed out a lot of those. So then there was a period of growth where a lot of companies were building new products and services, and then came with the next sort of bull run. Came a lot of these sort of companies that had been sort of dormant and working on different models and business models and projects came to the fore and decided, okay, now the market is hot. We want to sort of get involved and really bring our product to fruition and basically to the world. So again, that saw a lot of growth in business for us as advisors to these type of firms. For us, what we've seen as well is that luckily we are a very big firm, and we've got great people here, so we were able to sort of pull from different teams. If crypto being such an interesting and hot topic, it was easy to recruit people from other areas within the firm to basically lend a hand, because at one point we were getting so much, a lot of deal flow was coming through, Yeah, a lot of it was, shady, as you called it before, and we obviously turned away. But a lot of the good stuff, we found ourselves, look, we don't want to turn this stuff away because actually we see, it's very interesting, and we see, this being a very good project to get involved with. So what we did was try to bring in people from different areas within the firm to help out, and that meant that we didn't have to go out and recruit more people who, without knowing what was going to happen perhaps 12 months down the line. Do we have, is the workflow going to carry on? So we were quite lucky in that sense. But now, the crypto team is growing even stronger, and as Mihai can tell you, and obviously we've seen it with his company as well, how firms evolve in terms of the product offering and service offering that they have in place, and how that evolves over the years.
Yeah. So it's kind of maybe helped even to transition through this very difficult time where there was so much uncertainty in so many industries.
Definitely. I mean, Gibraltar came out quite early with promising this legal certainty, which other jurisdictions couldn't.
Yeah.
So that was a big selling point for us as a jurisdiction. A lot of people coming in because we were able to provide them clarity, whereas with our regulatory framework, whereas other jurisdictions weren't able to offer that because simply hadn't had the time to spend on it and to discuss, okay, how we're going to treat this new business, new type of activity, how we're going to treat it from legal and regulatory perspective. So yeah, we obviously were ahead of the curve in that sense. Being a small jurisdiction, we're able to do these sort of things. But yeah, obviously now we are at a stage where we've got sort of a few years run lead on most other jurisdictions, because now we're seeing other jurisdictions come up with their own sort of regulatory frameworks or regimes, and so far I haven't seen anything that is competing with us, honestly. But I'm sure that there's all sorts of things coming up. Like MiCA is on the agenda. It's coming at some point. The UK are talking about having their own regulatory framework. So other jurisdictions are stepping up to the plate for sure. Singapore as well, and many others. But yeah, one thing that the Minister for Financial Services keeps telling me is, if you see anybody out there that's doing things better than us, please let me know.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we are always ahead of the curve.
Okay, so we'll come back to regulation and other new aspects, but I want to talk a little bit more about your other startup projects. But before we go into, really bite into Modex and the evolution of Modex. So you have been involved and still are in other tech startups, MoneyMailMe and dotLumen, which is one specifically that I've been asked to talk about a little bit, because it's a fantastic project. So tell us a little bit more about those startups and how you have combined your amazing entrepreneurial skills, which you've been awarded for by EY and you've received many other awards, with your tech skills to become successful.
Well, I think, I think it's just a matter of focus. There are a lot of talented engineers out there, a lot of talented experts out there. I think what they need is a constructive framework, and I think that was my core strength, to put those very good engineers into a good framework where, for me, innovation is the ability to transform an idea into an invoice. So not just into a product. So I was very focused on that. And I try to help as many other entrepreneurs as possible. At Lumen, there's a very interesting mission over there. It's the only product that regains the mobility for blind people. You can imagine we took the technology of Tesla with the 5 cameras, and we just put it on the forehead of blind individuals. So if a piece of metal can go from here to Marbella without hitting anything, how come a blind person, some of them are PhDs and double PhDs, and they cannot go from here to the bathroom? And this was the main problem that we're trying to solve. And we've done it. We won last year the Nobel Prize for Industrial Design, which is the red dot luminary.
I think that deserves a round of applause. I definitely think that deserves a round of applause. That's impressive.
Yeah, we competed in the final with the Virgin Galactic spaceship and with some other projects. And for us, it was incredible. We were just starting out as three ambitious guys, and now we're a team of 50 also over there. At Modex, we're close to 100. But I think that is very important to really put a lot of energy and put a lot of resources behind a project like this. There, it's a really beloved product because we're really making a difference for people. My focus is, besides blockchain and cybersecurity, to really have meaningful products that really make a difference. We're focusing too much on getting to the moon, and we have people like that with major problems. We have millions of people dying on just because AI was not properly used to diagnose stuff. So I think it's quite of a personal mission. Once we get more substance from the initial products, to focus purely on projects like these ones that are really meaningful. It's impressive to see a blind person after 10 minutes able to navigate, able to read, able to avoid any type of obstacle, able to recognize a glass, and able to have a normal life. Because we forget some of the time. We're just busy with our lives, and we forget how all these small things are super meaningful for guys in need. And I think this is very important for us as entrepreneurs to kind of like create a chain and go from one project to another, use the resources from the first one and deploy to the second one. And this is the one project we're deploying now. We're working on two other projects. One is basically using graph neural networks in anti-money laundering in crypto. This is a project that we're going to launch very soon. It's another startup, another spin-off with extremely talented Oxford engineers who are very focused on graph neural networks. And this is the supreme way to track patterns. There's no other, today in the world, no better way to track patterns than graph neural networks. So there are extremely bright guys all over the world. I think what we all need to do, all of us in this room, is we need to really decide to support them and get involved next to them, because even the smallest support can make a difference. And for us, it was really important to come here into a regulatory framework that allows us to grow. The same with Lumen, where we're moving into a jurisdiction which allows us to get all of the approvals, and the same with other projects. So it's a very important part, because this can be a blocker at some point. You can have the best idea, limited resources, but if you cannot get it over the line, that's it. But I think that was my personal passion, to see projects growing from just an idea into a functional product that is really of substance.
But it also takes a bit of talent, or a lot of talent, I would say. So you can be humble, but I'm not going to accept it, because what you've done is pretty cool, and you should be very proud. We're very proud to have you here in Gibraltar too. Would you say that it's important to have projects in the right place in order for them to succeed? Is that one of the bits of advice that, in your experience, is very important?
Well, yeah, perfection rules the start. So every time when we want to build a new company or a new project, I use the analogy with the iPhone. We're trying to build iPhone 12 before launching iPhone 3. So we're always thinking of the new features, and we're over-engineering all the time. Well, I think, experienced entrepreneurs is the staging. And, for us, it's important, and I always keep my teams focused on the 60%, not 90%. For me, if we go to 90%, we're completely wrong. So we prefer to reach a 96%, but composed out of 6 sessions of 60%. And I think it's more important, we adapt the rapid prototyping technique to go fast from here to there. But, it's important to learn on the way and to make all the mistakes at that point. But I think it's just a matter of mindset. I think the difference between a pure engineer starting a startup and an experienced entrepreneur starting a startup is that we are very used to going in that 60%, so with unfinished stuff, and to take it over the line win after win, compared to somebody else who decides to have a perfect product before hitting the market or before going life. But we see that all the time, from PlayStation to iPhone to everything. Very experienced companies just launch in stages. They know exactly how the iPhone 15 will look like with all the features. They don't put them in the iPhone 12. They prefer to kind of like design the growth and do it like that. And I think a lot of this has to do with saying the right no's. Most of the times we say too much too often yes. And it's quite problematic for the resources of the team. And I think, this is what you learn when you're building various projects, that you have to say the right no's also.
Fantastic. So going back to what Anthony spoke about before and the challenges, what have the past few years taught you, and what entrepreneurs could be doing better?
Well, I think it's all about resilience. So basically, it's a marathon. I know that it might sound as a cliche, but it really is. It really is a marathon. I think you should always be ready to face the hardest times. We faced it on all fronts, from being in the impossibility of raising money just because everybody saw blockchain as the bad guys, from the disillusion of a normal technology. If we look at absolutely all the technology, we have the hype cycle, then we have the disillusion stuff, and then we have the adoption. It's absolutely normal in absolutely all of them. From cyber to AI to blockchain to absolutely all of them. And now we're getting back to that adoption stage. And I think in our industry, it was I think maybe the hardest part, because also we were hit in the media by a lot of negative things. The whole industry was extremely affected. Well, it was true. Most of them were true. There were a lot of guys who were benefiting from the lack of legal framework and the fact that it was a Wild West, and in the Wild West everybody can do whatever they want. And we were there in the same room with them, and we had to say, we're also in this space, which was really problematic compared to what happens in medcare, medtech, or what happens in cybersecurity, the other companies that I'm involved, where you don't have this aggressive kind of like wave against you. So in our industry, I think it was probably the hardest. But I think, as entrepreneurs, we always have to find ways. And it doesn't matter how you manage to get it over the line, as long as you're still here and the team is growing. And, with all the mistakes and all the pluses or the minuses, I think the result is the fact that we're here and we've survived the 3-4 years with a bigger team. We tripled the team and we learned so many things. And I think it was extremely good because, it matured the company, it matured our product offering, and it matured also our view on the industry.
Fantastic. So a bit more for the benefit of the people who are watching online, who are outside of Gibraltar. Anthony, what does Gibraltar as a jurisdiction have to offer startups in this space, and maybe in others too, that other jurisdictions do not?
Good question. I think Gibraltar is a very strong jurisdiction in particular for fintech space, and for any blockchain related sort of activity. It's not for everybody because it's a jurisdiction which has a sophisticated regulatory framework, whereas a lot of other jurisdictions don't have that. You mentioned earlier, it's a wild west. Just because there are no regulations doesn't mean that there's going to be that everybody has to be a bad actor, right? So there could be very good companies who may not be ready for Gibraltar in the sense that they're not ready to apply for a license here and have all the physical presence that they need to have, and it gives these sort of companies sort of extra credibility and extra weight when it comes to going to seek investments, or when it comes to giving comfort to their consumers. The fact that Gibraltar regulated firms can say, actually, we are operating in the same world as all these guys, but we have chosen to regulate ourselves at the highest standard because we want to give that comfort to our users. We want to show our partners that we're doing things correctly from day one. everything is in order and following best practices. Even though we could set up in one of the more exotic locations around the world and just not have to answer to anybody. So I think Gibraltar offers that sort of, it's almost a badge of honor now, that's what it's become, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve, really. We achieved it in the e-gaming space over many years, and it's something that it was in the vision of the stakeholders that put all this together at the beginning. This was part of the plan. The plan was, we want to, we're a small jurisdiction. We don't want to have huge number of players here. We're not that maybe the model of other jurisdictions, but it's not for us. We'd rather have a small number of people here, but the quality is everything. So that's exactly what's happened. We've developed into a jurisdiction which is known as a reputable jurisdiction for this type of activity. So the fact that there are so many negative connotations around crypto and blockchain, actually when you go and say, well, but this is a Gibraltar company, licensing regulated Gibraltar, oh, right? So some we get that experience a lot with banks. Other VCs, other partners, insurance service providers, company management firms, all of these companies, all these sort of firms that feed into this ecosystem. The fact that you tell them, this is a Gibraltar company, okay, they're crypto, but this is, licensed and regulated in Gibraltar, that sort of really is a game changer for them. So, and we've seen it in practice. We thought at the beginning that this would be great to have this. But actually we've seen it develop over the years. So that's what Gibraltar is. Like I said again, it's not for everybody, and some startups actually, you said yourself, right? You have to go 60% of the way. You don't have to be 100% right. Yeah. As long as you can sort of go in that direction, going that you want to traveling in the right direction. And I can understand that for a startup. You're coming up against a lot of these hurdles all the time, and to often we get firms coming and saying we'd love to be here and we'd be back.
Yeah.
But for now, we're going to set up in a jurisdiction with a lower barrier to entry, and often what we tell those clients is no worries. In the meantime, why don't you start the process of speaking to the regulator, seeing what you're going to need to be having. And now also with the registration process, the VASP regime, which is what Modex has recently been registered for, it is sort of light. It's almost like a step one to regulation. So it gives firms the ability to sort of tiptoe into the waters and say to the regulators, "This is us. Our plan is to apply for a license, but for now we're going to limit our activity to A, B, and C, and therefore we just need to register ourselves." So, and that is a much quicker process than going down the full, and cheaper, by the way, than going down the full, office space here, big team, not necessarily a big team, but relocating individuals and things like that. So, I think a lot of people now taking advantage of this new sort of step one, which is the registration regime. That's I can see a lot. It makes a lot of sense.
I think it's important as you're building up your startup to know when you're ready for certain stages of the scaling. And if you scale too quickly, you can also fail very quickly. So that's great advice.
Yeah, the other thing, before we move on about Gibraltar, and a big plus, I think, is the ability to go to the regulator and sit down with them and actually speak about, this is what we've got. This is in our minds, this is in our roadmap, this is our plans. This is something that we'd be able to do here, and if so, how would we go about that? The regulator is, and I've dealt with other regulators, and it's a stark contrast. I mean, the fact that we can call up, some of these guys who obviously do it on a daily basis, so they must be fed up with us. But we actually have developed a good relationship with them over the years, and the fact that we're able to give them a call and say, we've got this, I'll send you an email, but this is something that we've been sort of working on. What do you think? What are your thoughts? This is our view. What do you think? And more often than not, we seem to be on the same page, obviously, because we've done a lot of this, working together with the regulator as well over so many years now. So we sort of know what sort of questions they're going to be asking, what they're sort of expecting to see from applicants or from firms that are operating in the jurisdiction. And then there's all the other service providers in Gibraltar who have developed this expertise around blockchain as well, because they've been forced to, because they want to obviously stay relevant in the markets. So if blockchain companies are moving to Gibraltar and setting up businesses here, these companies and service providers want to be able to offer their services to them. So we've seen that they have almost forced themselves to educate themselves, banks, insurance service providers, the accountants, all these guys have been forced to learn about this, and if they wanted to play the game.
Yeah. So accessibility is a big part of the attraction to Gibraltar. Would you say that the great events that we do here as well is part of it? So tell us a little bit about the Modex proposition, because we haven't really heard too much about what Modex is, because we're going to go into grasp a little bit more. But before we go into that stage of where you are now, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what Modex is?
Great. Before going to that, I would like to take a step forward and basically give a kind of like a very small conclusion after all these years of working with the Gibraltar authorities, the Gibraltar lawyers. I would say, you can use this as a tagline, Gibraltar cares. Compared to other jurisdictions, I mean, here there's a real intention of doing things right, and also it helps us a lot. Because in other jurisdictions, you need to come up with like a huge business plan for why they should look into this Web3 part. Here they already taken 5 steps forward, and they're here to support us. And I think, if I have to speak in front of Web3 founders all the time, I always tell them, look, Gibraltar cares. If you want to go there, you'll find ways to get the things done and really grow your company over there, because you're going to be supported. If you're doing things the proper way, you're going to get the right support. Compared to other jurisdictions where they don't even want to talk about it, or they say, let's wait 5 years, or you look at, I don't want to give names, but there are other jurisdictions where they said, let's just park this for the next 5 years and see what others are doing. And I think, we're missing the biggest, I think one of the biggest and the most important technology waves that was ever created. The Web3 part, with metaverse, with all the hype around it, but also the substance behind it. I think it's, we're in front of the biggest movement of wealth in the history of mankind in the next 10 years. And this happens from the physical world to the digital world. And this is more than all of us, even the experts in this field, can imagine. And it's great, but also we need to be prepared for that. Yeah. So part of the reason why we've built Modex, and one of the things that makes it quite unique in the space, we wanted to hide blockchain. We wanted to talk purely about the benefits, and we wanted to kind of like keep the technology in the back end. So technically we wanted to democratize access to blockchain. For example, we said, how can a company who's working with Microsoft Azure, for example, can benefit from the real value of blockchain? So we integrated fully with Microsoft. Now we've moved from technical partner to commercial partner, now to fully transactable with Microsoft. So you can just go there, click and deploy, and you have your nodes and your network up and running. With Google, with AWS, with all the other clouds, we're basically moving into the blockchain as a service type of deployment. Whereas a startup or as a big enterprise, you don't want to own a piece of blockchain, you want to use a piece of blockchain. If you look at all the tech products that you use, you don't own them, you just use them. From email to servers to all of the softwares, we all use that. Only in blockchain, because we were in the early days, you needed to work with a custom blockchain development company to build something for you. But you're in the business of, I don't know, financial services, or you're an insurance company. You're not a software company. and you should not own a piece of blockchain. That's why I strongly believe that blockchain should be used and not owned. That's why with our patented technology, we patented a technology called blockchain database. It's a way of actually transforming your database into a distributed database. Actually moving from a centralized node, which is your database, to a decentralized network that you own. So technically, let's talk about clear use cases. Full auditing. We were working with a bank, for example. Banks, insurance companies, they don't want to admit it, but they have massive frauds that are happening internally. So either external attackers or internal attackers. We wanted to fight against data manipulation because our core idea, why we started Modex, we started from the frustration that the controller of the database admin, is the owner of the truth. The moment I have access to your logs and to your database, whatever I modify over there, that's the truth. If we go in front of a regulator or a prosecutor, that's the truth. It's just impossible, if the logs are properly modified, to prove that it was different. And that causes massive frauds from insurance, banking, and all of these other industries. And we said, how can we put this filter on top of any type of database that leaves a trace, leaves a mark of absolutely all the changes that happen in a database? So for that, we had two options. Either to ask all of the clients to change their existing databases. How many of you would do that? Not many. Nobody wants to change a current system. So we wanted to come with something which is easy to deploy and sits on top of your database. If you have already an existing infrastructure, if you don't have it, to build a product directly using our BCDB core. From that, we had clients that said, look, but I control all the nodes. Is that real blockchain, really blockchain? We want a third party to host one of our nodes. So this is how we came up with the Modex network. With the Modex network, which is a layer 1 enterprise blockchain network that is going to be launched very soon. You're one of the first ones to hear about that. But this is a purely enterprise design type of blockchain where enterprises, regulators, we work with one European fiscal regulator, we're discussing with the second one. They want to control the whole infrastructure. They don't want to work with third parties, or they won't want to put things on Ethereum. One transaction on Ethereum when the network is congested is $90. Well, they have millions of transactions per day. You know, they're regulating insurance companies, they're monitoring different transactions. You cannot go on a public network like that. So we said it's time to build a private network that has all the benefits of enterprise, that goes to tens of thousands of transactions per second, and that can be used by proper companies. Another use case where we don't talk about blockchain. We only talk about the benefits. We're speaking for one of our partners with a big insurance company from Europe. And what do we know about NFTs? We know that NFTs are funny pictures that we buy with €1 and we sell it with 1,000. Great. But for this specific company, about 30% of the insurance policies are claimed as fraudulent. Either fake copies, either modified changes. And we said, how come we don't create on this infrastructure the idea that every insurance is an NFT? Technically, we're hiding the blockchain infrastructure behind your policy. You have an insurance policy when you insure your car, you have a QR code, you scan it, it's a valid one. The moment it expires, it's automatically destroyed. You don't have it. So the possibility of fraud becomes zero. So from 30% out of 180 million insurance policies to zero. We're working now on a project with Peugeot Group, with Stellantis Group, so all the brands, Jeep, Chrysler, and all of them. The history of a car, the logbook of a car is an NFT. So the moment you go and buy a car, you say, how much is it? 10,000. Okay, can I have the paperwork plus the NFT with it? If you don't want to share the NFT of the car, it means that you've modified the kilometers or the maintenance was not done in the proper shop. And this has nothing to do with the hype of blockchain. This is a real application that, you want to know that indeed what is in the logbook of the car is the proper data. It's something that would save us a lot of money. The same now, we're working with the biggest watch dealer in France. Whenever you buy a luxury watch, you get an NFT with it. The moment you want to sell the watch, you automatically need to transfer the NFT that goes with it. So again, we're hiding the blockchain component behind real use cases, and we're seeing like a ton of applications like this that are real use cases. There's nothing hyped around that. We've deployed recently an infrastructure to a fiscal regulator. They were regulating 7 insurance companies. How do companies report? Once a month, okay? You send a report to the regulator once a month. What happens in those 30 days, the record versioning on that specific database can suffer millions of modifications. But the regulator just receives on the 30th the final version of it. You know, then starts the investigation, then after 3-4 months you go back with comments. Well, we said, why don't we put our technology on all of these 7 databases, and the regulator takes in real time the data from the insurance companies. That was a shock, because they said, well, you cannot really do that. So why? We report at the end of every month. Yeah, but we're the regulator, we want to control that. Well, isn't the report at the end of the month enough? So basically, this is another application of blockchain where you have instantaneously and real time data protection, and you have basically a way of capturing the real truth. And I think blockchain, this is where it belongs, in the back end, where it's invisible and it does the job in that way. We're deploying another infrastructure now for electronic medical records in Nigeria, for example, and across all Africa for kids below 5. 5 million kids below 5 die every year just because the parents don't have access to the medical records. They don't have electronic medical records, they cannot measure the kids, and they cannot travel with their medical records when they move. So because they miss the vaccines, the kid is either underdeveloped, either dies. So we said, okay, how do we solve that? So we've implemented a network of nodes that is deployed within the country, so it's HIPAA compliant and GDPR compliant. And whenever you go to the doctor, basically the records are yours as a parent. You have them with you, you can carry them with you everywhere. If I ask all of us, where do we have our medical records? Some of them on WhatsApp, some of them on email, some of them printed, some of them lost. We don't know that. And for us, okay, maybe we can go with that. But with kids, it's a real problem. So these are real use cases that are starting to appear in the industry. And I think if you have a pretty decent infrastructure where you can host all of this, this is where the substance is. And we are very focused with Modex on real use cases and real implementations where we can show real KPIs in terms of either data loss prevention, either money that are being saved, either real benefits, not just hype. Because there's the other part with nice NFTs and funny games and funny cryptos. That's cool, but we prefer to focus on that.
Well, there is a bit of a Wild West going on also in the NFT, Web3 space, the metaverse. The conversation I've had with Selwyn over there, with the lack of controls that they have, especially with children, and you're seeing a lot of negativity over that because of the fact that it's very appealing to kids. But I mean, is there a difference between this and what you could get in any traditional game out on the internet? Is it that different in terms of the dangers, or is it just a good headline?
I think it's a good headline. I think it's no worse than any type of a social media platform or online game. I think there's violence in online games. I think there's manipulation in all of this kind of like web portals, freedom of speech. We've seen recently what's going on. I think it's not worse than that. If it should be regulated or controlled, yes, in one way. But on the other hand, I mean, we should look at how we look at these new technologies, because we tend to demonize them when they first appear, and we tend to think that they are worse than sugar. But at the end of the day, I think there's a normalization stage for absolutely all of those innovative technologies. So I think at the start, everybody throws stones at it just because it's cool to badmouth Web3 or Metaverse. I agree with the fact that it's overhyped. Metaverse would not change the world. It's just part of how the digital world is evolving. And maybe for us, it's not that important. But look at the 6 to 11 or 12-year-olds. Over the past 2 years in the pandemic, their whole world was the digital world.
Yeah.
So maybe for us, we had other activities, but for them, being disconnected with their colleagues in school, just being in that space, you know, they live in the metaverse. So for them, it's absolutely normal. It's their normality of consumption. That's the reason why Facebook decided to really target that category. Because in 5 years, they will be the consumers of the real business model of the metaverse. Because that was the normality of consumption.
Yeah.
It was the same with social media. It was very demonized. They thought we're going to break the whole world. But now we use it every day. And if we use it properly, it's not harmful.
No, I mean, I think the metaverse is a very exciting space. We had an event which we actually live streamed to metaverse. A lot of people who are here were actually in the metaverse. Nuria over there was going through the metaverse in our live stream. So it is a space that's worth talking about. But going back a little bit to the VASP, we've said that word a couple of times. How many people here know what a VASP actually is? Oh, well, I think, Anthony, you should explain a little bit more about what a VASP is.
I think more people than have raised their hands know about it.
Don't be shy.
But anyway, yeah, virtual asset service provider basically is what it stands for, and that those virtual asset service providers is very wide and range across lots of different activities. So, but basically, what the virtual asset service providers regime in Gibraltar has brought about is what I spoke about a bit earlier, which was, you can now register yourself as a VASP. It's purely focused on making sure that there's compliance with KYC and AML requirements. So that is the main focus behind it. They also look at people behind the project and to make sure that fits a program and this sort of stuff. But generally, there is one area of focus, which is AML, and that is very different to any other regime that we have under the Financial Services Act, which focuses on lots of other stuff, including complaints handling, business continuity, safeguarding of assets, risk, mitigation of risk. So the VASP regime is sort of much more straightforward process.
So what would your advice be for any new projects coming to Gibraltar looking at getting regulated at an early stage?
So whether or not you want to be regulated, I think it's important to get the right sort of advice early on to see, and to basically portray to whoever's advising, this is what I want to achieve, and this is what the time frames that we're working towards. And then, the advisor would be able to tell you, okay, this is where I think, this is what I think you should be doing, or maybe even, I don't know if Gibraltar is the right place for you, or if you're interested in getting yourself regulated, then, definitely make sure you have a good business plan in place, make sure you can, front load the application as much as you can so that you add all of the detail or as much of the detail as possible up front. And that will avoid, hopefully, a lot of interfering with the regulators. But yeah, definitely focus on the business plan, make sure you have everything clear, and then start to think about, okay, what sort of presence do I want to have? How, what sort of key functions do I need to fill out? What sort of team members do I need to start to create? I need to create a team that is able to deliver this product that I want to sell. So you need to find obviously the right people to do that, relevant experience, expertise for this sort of thing. And then go through the process with the regulator, and hopefully you're able to come out on the other side victorious.
So you have done that in your case with Modex recently, and you are now registered as a VASP. So tell us a little bit more about the Modex token and how you've revamped to have Web3 capabilities.
Yeah, so we launched the token in 2018. At that point, we were looking at a different type of application of our technology. We're looking at Ethereum, we're looking at empowering developers, creating a smart contract marketplace where developers can build lots of decentralized applications. And then with our experience over the last years, we decided that we can do much more than that. And we can really play an important role in the enterprise space. And we're now one of the leading enterprise blockchain companies out there. And I think, the fact that we decided to revamp the token had two ideas. One was to prepare the company for the next technological stack, which is the Web3 play, which we have, which is the layer 1 enterprise, Modex wallet, Modex ledger, and all of our technology products that we've built over the last 2 years. And the second was for sure to allow lots of companies and startups to be part of our ecosystem, because they see that the token is a significant incentive to participate in our ecosystem. And going forward, the utility of the token will be to basically be the governing token of the whole ecosystem. And I think it's important to launch projects like this. For example, there is a big car company in the sports car area in the US who said, look, we're very interested in building together a fundraising for us with an utility token, which is a tokenized option. And I said, great, why don't you tokenize your options on Ethereum? They said, well, because we cannot control what happens with the token. The moment it's an ERC20, anybody can go outside the system. So technically, we cannot control who buys the token. While if we're talking about a closed loop, a subchain, where you have tokens released purely in a subchain, you can work with various companies and create a network on their own. And they can go for the SEC and get the Reg D and all of these other stuff, because we're just the technical enablement platform. So the scope of the token was to strengthen basically our core technology stack and to close the loop on everything that we've built so far. And it's a great way to see like new developers accepting tokens to build stuff on our network. And I think this should be the spirit going forward. We see football teams that want to use the tokens purely to sell their NFTs. And I say, why don't you go with your season tickets, 10,000 season tickets on Ethereum? And we're like, we don't want to pay 90 euros for every transaction. Our users don't want that. So we want lower fees. We want the benefits of blockchain, but we want it like that. So we're looking at these big public networks like the, slow-moving Indian trains, and where we think there's also a separate market that is out there for a premium type of products purely for clients that want to not pay more, but benefit from a proper enterprise implementation without building any line of code, because that's very important. They love the idea of having this interaction with the private network, but they don't want all the hustle of building something like that. There's a special category for that, but basically that was our idea, to really become one of the leading layer 1 private permission type of blockchains that are out there. We don't want to go public. We don't want to go with public chains, or we don't want to become a network where you can just jump in and do it. We want to keep the regulatory framework, and we want to absolutely vet all the projects that are on board and on layer 1. And we're talking here with car companies, insurance companies, or large enterprises. That's our bread and butter. These are the companies that we want on board on the system. And I think that's why the DLT framework is super important for us, because all of these companies are starting to verbalize that. It's like, look, how serious is this? Are you regulated? Every time they start to ask this. Even the investors now, it's starting to become, we're now fundraising, so we're discussing with a lot of venture funds. And this is a key thing, maybe for some people it's not that important, but for us it's super important, because it's the maximum level that you can get. Some people don't know really about Gibraltar, and we're advocates of that, and they think, yeah, how come a small place like that be such an important player? And I said, look guys, just spend some time and look on the GFCA website, look at the steps over there, and when they come back and say, look, if that is implemented, then the possibility of fraud in a company that is there is close to zero. Zero. Because you cannot go to all of those steps and just being like a completely crazy Web3 type of guy. There's a market for those, and there are still a lot of anonymous people on this Web3 There's still a lot of anonymous transactions. There's a lot of crazy things happening still. And this is the spirit of blockchain. It will still happen that. But I think there's also another category of enterprise applications where there's a proper need for a structure like that. And we're very happy that we found it over here. It's a process. We're just starting out the DLT application process in the next months. And hopefully we're going to win, just like Anthony said. But we're very committed to that. And we saw the proper value in the eyes of the investor, in the eyes of token holders, and in the eyes of the community. And I think I won't give more than 12 months to this industry without proper regulatory framework. And Europe is going to hit like a hammer at some point, and it will just completely block a lot of stuff. They just put out the framework where they said that it's impossible to own an anonymous wallet, and that was an important piece of regulatory framework. I think it's too aggressive, and they could have done a much better job and discussed with Gibraltar properly and learn from that. But I think a lot of areas around the world will start blocking it. Abu Dhabi, Dubai are putting a strong kind of like hit on this industry, and I think we're going to look at about 200-300 companies globally that will have a proper regulatory framework over the next 24 months, and all of the investment money and all of the substance will be there. There's no way somebody will put, let's call it more than 10,000 euros, which is a big amount, into companies that the founders can just disappear the next day.
I mean, you have so many exciting things to talk about. I could go on forever. I really could, because I love everything that you've discussed today, plus the fact that you're such a positive advocate for the work that's being done here. And that's very much also to do with Anthony. Just to close off, because we've talked very positively about everything that's happened in Gibraltar so far in terms of regulations. But Anthony, what could we do better?
There's always room for improvement. I think it's difficult to be too critical of the regulator. I don't want to sort of throw any bars at them, because I think they've done a great job, honestly. But you know, I think more resources could be put in the right sort of places to be able to deliver to an industry which is becoming more and more important to the jurisdiction. You know, so I think right sort of resources should be put to be able to address that properly. You know, and you know, speed to market. We always say speed to market is important, and I know that the regulator is advocating for that as well, and they're trying to achieve that. And you know, when we compare ourselves to other regulators, no doubt we are very quick. But you know, I still think we could always get better in that sense. And you know, keep like I mentioned earlier, make sure we stay ahead of the curve, because there's a lot in this industry. It's very fast, you know, very fast paced, and you can't blink with seeing the latest sort of innovation. So it's important to, you know, stay alive to all these sort of changes, all these new products coming up from the market, and see how best we can support the industry in being able to deliver those things as well, and to be able to compete on a global level, whilst always obviously maintaining the right sort of mentality in terms of, you know, reputation, being above everything else, and, you know, protecting consumers and all this sort of stuff.
Great. So we have a little bit of time for Q&A. Do we have any questions online? Great. Anybody here would like to ask a question? Wow. All these shy people. Okay, so welcome to Gibraltar. You just arrived today, Mihai and the team at Modex, who are around as well. You're here till Thursday.
Yes.
I hope that if anybody wants to meet the guys from Modex, that they can do that through Anthony. And we're very excited to have you here for a couple of days. And thank you for joining us at Startup Brand Gibraltar.
Thank you, and congratulations for that.
No problem. Okay, so you can enjoy a few more drinks and some nibbles. Please take the food, it looks amazing. Thank you very much for being here, and that's all from me.